Estelle Mouzin leaves school with two of her friends, the three of them living in close proximity in a quiet residential area. At around 6:20 p.m, as they pass the local bakery, she separates from her schoolmates and carries on with her journey. At this point, she is less than a kilometre from home. At 7 p.m, her mother returns home from work and realises that Estelle is not there. Estelle's parents were separated and in the process of divorce at the time. Estelle and her 16-year-old sister lived with her mother, Suzanne, and their older brother lived with their father about 60 kilometres away. She presumes she's off playing with friends, so Suzanne starts to call around to try and locate her daughter, but no one knows where she is. As she starts to panic, she jumps in the car and retraces Estelle's usual route from school to home, but there's no sign of her. It's a cold, dark evening and there are few people out on the streets. An hour later, Suzanne calls Estelle's father and tells him his daughter is missing. He immediately drives to Guermantes, preparing himself for the worst. He arrives at around 9:30 p.m. and together they call the police. Their first thought is that they are dealing with a runaway, but as the parents describe Estelle's character, this theory becomes more and more unlikely, and they begin to take the disappearance more seriously. It's possible Estelle has been taken. They search the entire village and carry on late into the night, but as conditions become more treacherous, they are forced to abandon until morning. As the sun comes up, police deploy all resources at their disposal. They cut into frozen ponds with chainsaws and call in divers in case Estelle had fallen into the icy water. Local officers are joined by firefighters and police dogs, with the whole operation being accompanied by helicopter. Even the army is called in to help with the search. As the hours pass, it seems more and more plausible that Estelle has been abducted. It's like she vanished into thin air. The town comes together and many local residents participate in the search. They form human lines and cover every blade of grass, looking for any clues. Time is of the essence, as we all know. The first few hours in a child's disappearance are the most crucial, and the more time passes, the fewer clues there are, and the less likely they are to find her. It doesn't take long for the media to get hold of the story, and it's soon national news. Estelle's picture is plastered absolutely everywhere, and every parent in France says a prayer for Suzanne and Eric. 3 days go by and the search reveals nothing. But then, out of nowhere, a lead. A man leaves a voice message on the phone of Estelle's school and also Estelle's mum. He claims to have been forced into kidnapping Estelle with another friend, but states he had regretted doing it. He claims that she is alive and would be safely put on a train back to Paris. They trace the call, which was made from a phone booth in Avignon. Police flood the station in Paris, searching every train coming from that direction. Unfortunately, Estelle is not on any of them. In fact, it turns out to be a complete hoax. The man would be arrested the following month and diagnosed as a mythomaniac. He would be sentenced to 2 years in prison. Undeterred by this setback, on January 14th, the search for Estelle becomes the largest ever on French soil. Approximately 600 law enforcement officers simultaneously conduct a search of every house in the village. They knock on every door and interrogate every individual. They look in people's fridges and freezers to see if anyone's hiding anything. The village is completely surrounded and they close all routes in and out. Nobody can leave without being interrogated and their identity checked. They review satellite images to see if they can spot anything suspicious, but they find nothing. Detectives believe that whoever took her most definitely planned it in advance. If she'd been taken forcibly, surely someone would have heard her screams. So either it had to be someone she knew, who she would happily get into a car with, or it was someone who knew how to get her into a vehicle, a professional abductor. 8 specialist investigators are entrusted with the case, and they focus directly on Estelle's immediate circle. It's a fact that in 80% of cases of child disappearances, a family member is involved in some way. The parents don't particularly appreciate the scrutiny, as in their eyes, every second that goes by interrogating them is a second lost where they could be really looking for their daughter. 6 months go by before any new hope comes to the surface. They receive a testimony from a little girl who says she was approached by a man while walking home. He was driving a white van, and this happened close by 3 weeks before Estelle's disappearance. They track down all the white vans of that type in the region, but nothing untoward is found. However, thanks to her statement, they are able to create a composite sketch, so at least they have something to go off. They then cross off all the registered sex offenders in that area, 75 in total. They go through their homes, their computers, but her whereabouts remain a complete mystery. Despite making no progress in France, remember we are close to the Belgian border, Events taking place in Belgium draw their attention, and a clear suspect comes to light. On June the 26th of that year, a man named Michel Fourniret had been arrested for an attempted kidnapping. A 13-year-old girl was walking home from school when he forced her into the back of his white van, but somehow she managed to escape, and detectives traced the vehicle back to Fourniret. They also find out he was implicated in the disappearance and murder of multiple victims, mostly young girls. He had family near Clairefontaine, and to get to Clairefontaine from Belgium, he would have passed very close to Guermantes, the village where Estelle vanished. Police show a photo of Fourniret to the girl who'd been approached 3 weeks earlier, but she doesn't recognise him at all. She says it's not him, it's not that man. And at this stage, police kind of just take her word for it. They put a hell of a lot of trust in the memory of a very young girl. Estelle's case goes cold. But in Belgium, there is a breakthrough. Following a year of fruitless interrogations of Fourniret and his wife, Monique Olivier, who they believed was also involved, Olivier finally gives them something. She claims her husband had kidnapped, assaulted, and murdered several young girls. And later that month, he confesses to 6 murders. Despite this confession, investigators do not believe that Fourniret is their man in the Estelle Mouzin case. He was almost exclusively interested in teenage girls. He was a man obsessed with the concept of virginity. And according to experts, Estelle was much too young. She was only 9 years old when she was abducted. All his other victims appeared to be in their teens or early 20s. More importantly, Fourniret had an alibi for that date. He was at home in Belgium and allegedly made a phone call to his son to wish him happy birthday. The call didn't go through because his son didn't pick up, but they checked the phone records and indeed the call is there. They search his home and they find a cassette tape of a news report on Estelle. And on his computer they find a photo of Estelle, the same photo that was all over the papers. So despite the sketchy alibi and pictures of her on his computer, they still don't think he's the guy. Years go by and several other leads are explored. A skeleton was found in a Chinese restaurant in the village, but it turned out to be a dog. A suitcase was found in a hotel containing press cutouts and notes on the case, but when they find the owner, the person would have been just 11 years old when Estelle was abducted. Several other men are accused, interrogated, and acquitted. It seems clear Fourniret holds the key. On January the 9th, 2018, Estelle's father, Eric, announces he is to sue the state for gross negligence. The Mouzin family's lawyer points out what they identify as failings or hastily closed leads during the investigation, such as the exclusion of suspect profiles that were never heard, the destruction of cigarette butts and a bag of pastries found behind Estelle's house that were never analysed, or Michel Fourniret's alibi that he provided to the police. Fourniret's son has no recollection of the call and he barely spoke to his father at the time. On July the 25th, 2019, the Mouzin case is transferred to Paris. The Parisian judge Sabine Keris plans to focus exclusively on the Fourniret lead by conducting further interviews with him and his now ex-wife. Monique Olivier is interviewed on November the 21st, 2019, and what she says changes everything. She tells the judge that on the morning of the 9th of January 2003, Fourniret told her to call his son if he didn't come home that night. And so at 8:08, from their home in Belgium, she attempted to call Fourniret's son. Remember, this call was the key to his entire alibi. If he was at home in Belgium at 8:08, he couldn't possibly have been in Guermantes snatching Estelle 267 kilometers away at 6:45, the time at which Estelle disappeared on her way home from school. She doesn't stop there. She tells the judge she was present at the house in the Ardennes where Estelle was being held captive, assaulted, and ultimately killed by her ex-husband. Forensics would later find partial DNA traces matching Estelle on a mattress in the former home of Fourniret's sister. She then indicates to the judge where the body may be found. They find nothing. On November the 27th, 2019, following this explosive testimony, Fourniret is officially charged with kidnapping and sequestration, followed by death. Earlier that next year, Judge Keris goes face to face with Fourniret. He claims that his memory is fading away, but that he should be considered guilty of Estelle Mouzin's murder. Monique Olivier is interviewed again the following day. She repeats her statement that Michel Fourniret had indeed killed Estelle, adding that he had been scouting the area in the days before the abduction, and had come home one evening saying he had spotted, quote, a beautiful little subject. Less than 2 months later, he outright confesses to the murder. Multiple searches have taken place in and around the Ardennes. but no body has ever been recovered. It's crazy to think that investigators dismissed Fourniret's involvement based solely on a phone call and an alibi from his complicit wife. Fourniret was a callous, calculated, and evil individual. He loved to confuse and tease, play with everyone's nerves. It's hard to know whether he genuinely couldn't remember where he'd buried her body because he'd abducted so many girls, or if he was playing everyone along the whole time. Fourniret died in prison in May 2021. Estelle's father, encouraged by detectives, met with Fourniret in prison a few days before his passing in search for answers. According to Estelle Mouzin, Fourniret was incapable of stringing a sentence together, and he obtained no useful information. This year is the 20th anniversary of her disappearance. Estelle's mother left France and moved to South Africa. Her father, Eric, continues the search for his daughter. Let me know in the comments how you feel about this case. Smash the like button to show your appreciation. And if there's any cases you'd like us to cover, please don't hesitate to suggest them below. Estelle Mouzin was just one of Michel Fourniret's countless victims. To find out more, click on this video right here, as I recount the history of one of France's most prolific serial killers. Crime Dog out.